Good morning. Good morning. I'm Reverend Mark Duntley, and on behalf of Lewis and Clark College, I'd like to welcome you to this memorial service and celebration of life for Beth Hiller. This is a particularly good place for us to gather to remember Beth. Those of us who've been here at the college for a number of years remember her as a colleague and a friend, and so she would appreciate our newly remodeled sanctuary here and the addition of extra light. And I know from her perspective and her background that inner light shined forth in so much of what she did. And we have a little bit more external light here in the chapel for this beautiful occasion where we celebrate her life and remember all the love that she brought into our lives. Beth joined the Lewis and Clark staff in 1993, and while she was here, she served a number of roles, two of which are the Director of Donor Relations and Director of Special Events. And so she would have understood what goes into creating an event like this. And I know in working with Pete and other family members, there's a lot that goes into this. She was always behind the scenes, but you knew she was doing a great deal to make things work out right. So, Beth, we want you to know we're doing this right just for you. And so we've gathered in your memory to indeed have a gathering where we can acknowledge all that you've brought into our lives. I can only speak about her as a part of this community, but I know today we'll hear a lot about the full spectrum of her life. And I think that's one of the joys that I have in hearing about people who've died, is that I get to know their parts of their lives that I never actually knew because I wasn't a part of that. So I hope that you'll learn a little bit more about Beth today before you leave this place, and you'll be reminded of how her life can help teach you how to live a better life and to go forth from this place renewed and encouraged. So on behalf of Beth's family, sons Chris and Pete, and also partner Jan, who are here with us, and the rest of the family, extended family, I want to welcome you here. We'll have a reception afterwards, and so we invite you to attend that as well. And I would also like to say that Beth was an active member of First Unitarian Church for a number of years. And so we are privileged to have Reverend Tom Disrud here to lead us through the service today. So I'd invite him to come forward and lead us in the introduction. So thank you again for coming, and welcome.
We gather together this day to celebrate and honor the life of Beth Hiller. Beth died just a little over 3 weeks ago on September the 6th, and her death, which came after a very short illness, came as a surprise to most of us. The reality of her death is still sinking in. We come together in this place where she served to honor and to remember her life. We hold her family, her sons Chris and Pete, her partner Jan, her brother John, her children by volition, Barbara Stroud and David Richter. We join together, her family and friends, to speak words of tribute and to be with others who mourn. We come to share our memories. We come here to tell a little bit of the story of her life. Mary Elizabeth Leiby was born on April the 4th, 1939 in Philadelphia. She was the daughter of Mary Hiller and Harry Leiby and joined her older brother Jonathan. She attended Friends Central School. She went on to earn a bachelor's degree in history of religion at Earlham College. In 1961, she married Dr. Robert Hoe, and with whom she would have 4 sons, Keith, Lynn, Chris, and Pete. For the next 34 years, she would be known as Elizabeth Libby Hoe. The couple started out in Detroit, Michigan, moved to Des Moines, Iowa, and eventually made their way west here to Portland in 1965. Beth's marriage to Robert ended in 1979. After the divorce, she went to work at First Interstate Bank. She also began a relationship with Ed Richter, who was a writer. This was not an easy chapter in Beth's life. She lost both of her parents, and she suffered the most formative event of her life, the loss of her sons Keith and Lynn to suicide. The years that followed were a time of rebuilding for Beth. Her relationship with Ed came to an end, and she moved on from First Interstate Bank to explore other career paths. She also legally adopted her mother's maiden name. Beth Hoe became Beth Hiller. In 1993, Beth came here to Lewis and Clark College. It was a place that truly spoke to her. She found rewarding work in the college relations department. She eventually became the director of donor relations. It was also during this period that she reconnected with Jan Kem, an Earlham classmate who had recently relocated here to Oregon. Beth retired from full-time work in 2004 at the age of 65. Retirement was not a time for her to slow down. She was active at First Unitarian Church. She served the church in many ways, including on the nominating committee. At the time of her death, she served as a steward on our church foundation board. She served on the board of Outside In. She knitted sweaters, socks, and hats for loved ones. She engaged, as her family says, in heated Scrabble battles and lent a dependably compassionate ear to hundreds of friends and family members. She traveled extensively, leaving footprints from Australia to Panama, to Turkey, to Hungary, to Romania, and many other places beyond. On her most recent trip with Jan to visit family on the East Coast, Beth began to experience abdominal pain. The day after her return to Portland, she was diagnosed with late-stage liver cancer that had metastasized. Her decline was very quick, and she entered Hopewell House Hospice on September 5th. With Jan at her bedside, her sons Chris and Pete with her, she died at 12:42 on September the 6th. Beth lived for 73 years. Each of us here knew Beth in our own particular way. She was mother, lover, sister, friend, colleague. She was an enthusiastic gardener, a good listener, knitter, traveler, ready for whatever adventure greeted her next. Beth, I know, strived to live a life of integrity. It was very important for her that her actions be in line with her beliefs. We create a space here now together to share memories, to share tears of sadness, and also maybe some tears of joy. We come here to honor this person we loved. We come here to honor this person we will deeply miss. I invite Jeff Anderson now to come and offer a remembrance.
Well, nothing quite prepares you for this. To echo what Mark said, I think that we all have a lot of remembrances, and I think we'll probably have a lot of overlapping remembrances. I think a lot of us are going to have litanies of qualities that we loved in Beth. So, It makes me laugh in a way because if Beth were organizing this event, she would be sure that the speakers weren't all repeating themselves. But I'm afraid that we may actually be repeating ourselves a bit. So let me just say that as much fun as it was to work with Beth, which I did for 5 years, it isn't her work to me that defines her life with all of us. It's just Beth herself, the whole person. You know, I met Beth 20 years ago. I found almost instantly a trusted friend. And I think that probably is an experience a lot of people in this room would echo. I'm supposed to talk a bit about her work, so I'll do that, but I warn you, I'm actually terrible at recalling anecdotes, so I end up being fairly general and talking about, again, the whole person. We were lucky to have her on a great staff at Lewis & Clark in the 90s, and after I left, she worked into the 2000s. Coming to Lewis & Clark, as was said earlier, after years of working at First Interstate, Beth became an integral member of the team that succeeded in the most ambitious fundraising campaign to that point in the college's history. She created materials, she proposed ideas, she planned grand events, and then attended to their smallest details. She organized records, she mobilized students to participate, and she contributed to the stewardship of many of the college's most valued donors. She weathered lots of campus politics and changes in leadership, though not without sharing some trenchant observations about those changes now and then. Beth did enjoy undisguised truth, but she was very discreet. She earned promotions, well-deserved, and then she left high standards for her successors. One episode I do remember that I'd like to share, the very last college event that we organized together. Typically I had already left the college, in fact, and she kind of pulled me in to be a part of it. But I think this event is a window into Beth's mind and heart. And I think many people in this gathering have looked through very like windows in your own time with her. In 1998, the college was offered the opportunity to acquire a collection of first editions and rare broadsides of poetry by William Stafford, a National Book Award winning poet and a member of the college's faculty for many years. The celebration of that acquisition was planned in tandem with the dedication of the William Stafford Room in the library, just a few steps from here. And what everyone knew about that event was that Beth was a key member of the planning committee, that the occasion went off beautifully. But what they didn't know was that Beth was also anonymously a lead donor in acquiring the collection. And I think, in hindsight, she may have just been impatient with how slowly the rest of us were raising money for such an obvious priority. But I think she also couldn't bear the idea that the poems of such a resolute peace activist and poet and college icon would end up in the hands of any other library but ours. So she made it happen in more ways than one, and she did it quietly, as was her style. So as I mentioned earlier, it's really Beth, the whole person, though, that I really want to talk about a little bit more. And I think in this I'll be, again, repeating a lot of what others will say. But my remembrances are this, and Beth, a faithful and fond friend who adopted 3 generations of my family, taking my wife Joan and me and the kids for a day in the country and a ride on the Canby Ferry, which we had never been on before. It's a short ride, but it's kind of fun. And on that day, she took a picture of my daughter Lucy with her mouth full of chocolate that Beth had brought along in the picnic basket, which is still framed and in my wife's office. I remember Beth, the beloved companion, the proud daughter, the mother, the cousin and sister. Beth, who always stood for values shaped by her education at Earlham and the Friends School. Beth, the survivor of calamity. Beth, the responsible citizen and activist. Some of you will remember, though, that our work together in the 2004 election was not as successful as some of the other events Beth organized, but nonetheless, it was fun and representative of her. Beth, eager traveler, so often off away from Portland to unite with friends and family. Seattle, we've often heard Seattle trips, the Bay Area, Woods Hole, or to explore the textures of a Mexican island with Pete and Chris. We remember Beth, the photographer, off to Canyon de Chelly, Beth, the generous hostess and cook, Beth, the idealistic, spiritual, and practical person, all at the same time, the volunteer, the builder of community. And mainly Beth making us feel welcome, warm, and secure over a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. The novelist George Eliot gave us some of the most memorable phrases in the English language, I think, to describe the durable meaning of a life lived for other people. And she didn't know it, but I think she was foreshadowing Beth Hiller when she wrote this. Oh, the comfort, the inexpressible comfort of feeling safe with a person, having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words, but to pour them all out, just as they are, chaff and grain together, knowing that a faithful hand will take and sift them, keep what is worth keeping, and then with a breath of kindness, blow the rest away. And that's a person to be. Beth was that person, that faithful hand, and that breath of kindness.
Good morning. And thank you for coming. Beth was my cousin, but I'm here today with the words of Beth's partner, Jan, who asked me to read to you on his behalf. I've been told that there are steps that can be taken to deal with grief, and Beth's passing is the greatest grief that I have had in my life. The steps suggested to me were to build a raft. The letters of that work, R-A-F-T, stand for reconciliation, affirmation, farewell, and thinking to the future. In reconciling to her loss, I can accept that her presence was a great gift, and it was given to me by all of you who gave up a bit of the time that you would have had with her. I had lived years before we met in the late 1990s. These were years when she had her family while I had mine. She had loved others and I had loved another. We had years. We dated and traveled together, but then we went separate ways. And then we had less than 2 years of being committed partners. We had just that time. And the only way we, each of us here, can make her years continue will be to remember her. When friends and relations are together, we can remember Beth, and her presence will live on with us. In affirming her life, I don't know what to say, and I cannot even try. We each knew her in our own ways: partner, mother, relative, friend, swimmer, gardener, tireless homemaker, and a person who cared for other people and for the nature around us. Her life has in some ways shaped us all, and we can all affirm to be better for it. Saying farewell is very hard for me, as I know it will be for you. It will be something we each will have to do in our own way. Thinking about the future, Beth has had an influence on each of us, and we don't want that to end. She became my raft, and now it's time for me to do more of the paddling. She's put down the tools of her life, the social causes she worked for, the gardening tools, the bird feeders, the knitting needles and cooking ware, the cleaning tools, and her travel documents. Now it is our turn to take them up for her and wish her peace.
Hello to all of you, and my thanks for you being here. I'm Barb Stroud, and I'm very happy and very glad to have been one of Beth's children by volition. Beth and I were 12 years apart in age, and she was 10 years younger than my mother. My dad, Ed, and Beth were together for about 11 years, beginning in the early 80s. It didn't occur to me at that time to think of Beth as my stepmother, but a few years ago, Pete referred to me as my stepsister, as his stepsister, and it made me realize how important those connections are. Thank you, Pete, and I'm very glad to be a stepsister to both of you. When I first met Beth, I was in my early 30s and just becoming a mother myself. So Beth was not so much a mother to me as she was a friend and an advisor and a supporter through new times in my own life. And that just might be the ideal stepmother. It took me a while to warm up to Beth. We were in very different places. I was a hippie. I was just learning how to get along in the corporate world of work and buying a first house and enjoying and loving the natural world we live in here in the Pacific Northwest. Beth was busy with the divorce had just happened, with her 4 sons and their schools and their activities. And it took a while, but over time we connected. One of the first places was over the natural world and plants. We were both excited about those. Beth was very proud, and rightfully so, of the landscaping at Vale Court. Barbara Feely of Salishan fame had designed it, and it worked beautifully with the house and with the neighborhood. Beth always pointed out to me the pyracantha at the front door with the red berries. She loved it because the berries provided food for the birds late in the season when there might not be much else going on. Also, she had blueberries in the backyard, and I was offered some by a close friend and planted those in my front yard, and we spent a lot of time figuring out how to keep the birds away from those. Our son calls Beth his 3rd grandmother. David was born in 1983, 12 years behind Pete, and so the toys in the front cupboard were still there, and Beth made sure they were age appropriate. David would race into the house and the cupboard was opened. He took over the role of the youngest kid. Beth was ready with pumpkin carving at Halloween, wooden building blocks for the first birthday, handmade Christmas decorations. Our family grew to appreciate the traditions that Beth so loved. The hot spice cider in the fall with Applejack for the adults, the baked beans, collecting fir and pine cones, candles at Christmas time, lamb for dinner, and birdhouses. Beth moved in the mid-1990s to a townhome that was brand new in Multnomah Village, but reminiscent of the homes in Philadelphia and similar to the house she'd grown up in. She got the house on the end of the row, and so she had a little more garden space than the others. Not much, mind you, but a little more. In went the blueberry plants, the flowers, and the pyracantha, which is growing lovely, and it must be about 12 feet tall now. Most importantly, the bird feeders were installed on the back deck and eventually in the tree that grew up close by. And the front yard was planted with mostly low-growing plants and native and with a drip fountain so that the birds could always find water. That front garden is practical, beautiful, well organized, and understated, just like Beth. Beth and I shared a love of Scrabble. And I know it really took off when she started playing more with Pete. Then it became more competitive. I'd been working hard to keep up with my friend Patty, and all of a sudden, Beth started taking things more seriously too. She'd report each game to me, and every once in a while, she'd beat Master Pete, who did not use a dictionary. How many bingos, for those of you who know the game? What was the score? What was the best word? And the score pads have little decorations around the winning number. Beth loved and respected every one of you. I know that because she talked of you when she talked of you. She gave me a picture of your life. It wasn't just my friend Amy came over last night. It was my friend Amy Smith, who swims with me at the pool. She was a paralegal in a downtown law office, but she retired 4 years ago, and now she's, well, you get the idea, and I'm sure you've heard the same, probably about me. There are many other thoughts that come to my mind about Beth. She was one of the most thoughtful people I know. She loved the outdoors. She loved traveling, hiking. She gave much of her time to her volunteer activities. Her cooking was superb, and she was always willing to share the recipe. And she obsessed about the cleanliness of her house, but she never commented on how not as clean mine was. She was proud of us. She was glad to know us. She appreciated all of us. She supported us in our endeavors, whatever they were. She loved us, and we loved her, and we'll miss her.
Hi, my name is Mike. I went to high school with Linden, Pete and Chris's older brother, and got to know the family so many years ago. When Lynn left us all, I was highly complimented by Beth when she asked me to play something at his memorial. And on this occasion, Pete asked me to do the same, so I'm amazingly humbled and honored to be able to try to pull this off here. Our relationship has continued. It's great to see both of you guys. I'm sorry it's on this occasion. We were trying to figure out what songs to do. I came up with a Rachmaninoff thing. Not that I play that very well, but it seemed appropriately because it had a very compelling energy and peace to it. And then Pete came out with Coltrane. And I gave that a look over too. And I'm not sure I play that any better, but we decided they're both short little guys, and they actually play nice together, so I'm going to give that a shot. Thanks again, Pete.
Hopefully I won't break this. Thanks for everybody for being here. I know my mom would be really touched to see everybody here gathered to memorize memory in her memory. Throughout my mother's lifetime, she faced many setbacks and tragedies that very few people could ever relate to. From the days when her marriage deteriorated and finally ended in divorce, the loss of her 2 eldest sons to suicide, and my own struggles with chronic depression that I know kept her awake many nights as she worried about me. All of these things would have been enough to make others give up in resignation. Depression often runs in families, and ours panned out to be a textbook example. So it's no small wonder that not only did my mother survive all of this, but emerged from it with such grace and incredible resilience that it would be hard to know what she had endured unless she opened up and talked about it. She never let all the setbacks take her a permanent hold, but instead found a way to rise above these things and to find passion for the positive experiences that life had to offer. She never lost her ability to see the good qualities in people, and her compassion for others made it easy for her to forge many long-lasting friendships over the years. While she would probably never admit it to me, she was very good with people and knew how to make others feel welcomed in her presence. It didn't really matter who you were or where you came from. She always was willing to take the time to understand the perspectives and life experiences of others. Always at the core of her personality was an overriding interest to do good things, to empathize with other people, and whenever possible, she wanted to have a positive impact on other people's lives. This was especially true in the case when it came to the awareness of the homeless youth of this city. From an early age, my brother Linden struggled with mental illness, and things got worse for him as he approached adulthood. After many years of constant struggle, one day he vanished without a trace. A year and 7 months went by without us knowing what had become of him. And during this time, my mother would often drive around the city streets at night looking for her lost son. She never found him, but found many other kids without a place to call home or parents to rely on. I think it must have had a profound impact on her because even after Lynn's remains were recovered in a nearby forest, she never forgot the plight of the other lost, forgotten kids out there that had found themselves abandoned by the society we lived in. Where most people would have averted their eyes to such problems, she actively sought to engage them and became involved in the nonprofit organization Outside In to help these individuals. And eventually she became one of their board members. She did none of this in order to gain any recognition. She did it for no other reason other than that she wanted to help other kids avoid some of the same pitfalls that brought my own brother down. She did such things simply because she cared. My mother exemplified a genuine kindness to everyone that had the opportunity to get to know her. I think her understanding of what it was to suffer was a big part of that. It made her appreciate everyone as unique individuals. I think she had a special appreciation for life with a unique understanding that our time on this earth was limited. In the years that followed her retirement, she actively sought to live each day to the fullest. Always up for a new adventure, she traveled often to see new places and visit old friends. She remained full of energy and stayed very active despite her age. When she wasn't traveling, she would start most of her mornings by swimming more than a half mile each day at the community pool. With her active lifestyle, no one could have predicted that her life would be brought to such a swift conclusion. And she left us all so much sooner than anyone had expected. When the bad news came that she had terminal cancer, we were all completely shocked. None of us were ready for this news. and her decline was so swift that none of us had any time to prepare for it. Nevertheless, as difficult as it was to see all this transpire so quickly, I am very thankful that her suffering was very short-lived. She already had endured so much in the past that I think her rapid transition out of this world was as graceful as we could have hoped. I don't think that anyone that knew her would dispute that she had lived a very full life. And when she realized that it was drawing to an end, she accepted this reality in the same way she had learned to accept all other harsh realities that she had dealt with before. She embraced it as one last experience to be shared, for better or for worse, with the others around her. And on one sunny Thursday afternoon, holding my brother's hand in her left and mine in her right, she slipped away peacefully. When I look back at things now, my mother and I had a complicated relationship, and things were not always smooth sailing between us. But over the last decade or so, we were able to reach a better understanding of each other. And in the end, I feel that nothing between us was left unsaid. All she ever wanted from me was for me to understand her unconditional love. And for a very long time, this was a very difficult thing for me to fully accept. If I have any regrets at all, it's that I failed to let her be as close to me as she would have wanted. But we both did the best we could with the tools we had to work with. And the last few days of her life were probably the most important ones that I will always cherish. I have no neat and tidy way to end what I'm saying here before you. All I can say is what everybody in this room already knows. My mom was an extraordinary person, and she touched so many people that the void she leaves behind in her wake will be felt for a very long time. I'm so thankful that I got to be a part of her life, and I'm so proud that I was fortunate enough to be able to call this remarkable woman my mom.
Thank you for being here. I'm Pete, the young one. I need to take a group photo because she'd be mad she's missing this party. She's stomping around in heaven, mad that she missed this party. Everybody here knows that my mother was organized, and she was meticulous. If you ever had her Christmas cookies, you knew it. Not to be snotty, but when I was a kid and I saw other people's Christmas cookies, I wondered what had gone wrong. What natural disaster had occurred during the baking process of those cookies? Had there been a thunderstorm that knocked out the power during a crucial moment in the baking? Was there an earthquake when the icing was being applied to the burnt snowmen? I would scratch my bowl haircut and say, these do not resemble what I know to be Christmas cookies. Mom said she knew she had a problem when she found herself applying individual silver sprinkles with tweezers. Fortunately, she was able to get herself into a therapy group. And after she rearranged the chairs and sanitized the meeting room, she got the help that she needed. All right, hold on, strike that. I don't want everybody walking out of here thinking my mom was part of an OCD baking housewife therapy group. That's not true. But the thing about the tweezers and the silver sprinkles, that is true. So take that with you. All that is to say that my mom had her act together, and I thank her for that. It feels like she's taking care of us all in the afterlife. As I reluctantly go through her filing cabinet, I come across folders labeled Passing and End of Life and Wise Words, next to folders labeled Organizing Information and storage in which she cataloged every bit of junk that's in her basement. The folder marked organizing information is exactly that. It's literally carefully organized articles and notes about how to organize things. The folder labeled End of Life is basically instructions for her two confused and shell-shocked sons. She knew what we would be going through. She had lost her parents in the 80s, and she was the one who did all the heavy lifting when our brothers Linden and Keith passed. Several of the dates on the documents in the folder line up with Keith's death. He didn't have a will, and I remember how complicated that made things for her. She took the time to make sure it wouldn't be hard for Chris and me. And some might think it's a little morbid to bring that up here, but to me, it represents foresight and genuine empathy. Our mom had pre-empathy. The folder labeled Passing is filled with programs from services like this one, as well as essays and articles that reflect on grieving and a person's last days. There's a speech my mom delivered at our dear friend Harold Higley's memorial service, and one she wrote for Max Yao. There are writings by Kim Stafford and an article about the merits of cremation titled Light Like the Sun. My mom chose to be cremated. It says so in her filing cabinet, and it feels right to me and Chris. One day soon, we will hike the wooded trail down to Oswald West State Park, where we spread Lynn's ashes in 1986. Somewhere between the driftwood skeletons of old-growth Douglas fir trees and the crashing waves of the Pacific Ocean, we will find a place for Mom to stay. We will appreciate her life. We will say some words. We'll feel the love that she had for us. We'll stand in awe of the dramatic power of nature. We'll quietly hike back up the trail, push on with our lives, get back to work, and vow to finally get organized. Thank you.
William Stafford was one of Beth's favorite poets. This is his work entitled The Gift. Time wants to show you a different country. It's the one that your life conceals, the one waiting outside when curtains are drawn, the one grandmother hinted at in her crochet design, the one almost found over at the edge of the music after the sermon. It's the way life is, and you have it, a few years given. You get killed now and then, violated in various ways, and sometimes it's turnabout. You get tired of that, long suffering. You wait and pray, and maybe good things come. Maybe the hurt slackens, and you hardly feel it anymore. You have a breath without pain. It is called happiness. It's a balance, the taking and passing along, the composting of where you've been and how people and weather treated you. It's a country where you already are, bringing where you have been. Time offers this gift in its millions of ways, turning the world, moving the air, calling every morning, here, take it, it's yours. Mindful of the gift that each one of us has been given, to have Beth in our lives, let us take a few moments now to hold silence together. You are invited to a reception in the Stam dining room following the service. It's just out the front door, up the path. At the reception, Beth's family asked that you sign the guest register and also record a story about Beth. If you'd like to make a memorial gift in Beth's honor, her family recommends a donation to Outside In. As we've heard, Beth was a great champion of Outside In's work to help teenagers on the margins. Information will be available at the reception. And they would like you to take a seedling home to plant in Beth's honor. There are some here, there are some on the table out front, and there'll be some at the reception. And so we've come to the end of this service. May the stories, may the memories of Beth plant seeds in us of hope, seeds of gratitude for each one of us. We go forth now from this service in love and in hope.